All right. Well, my standard is good morning, good morning, good morning. And it is to whatever degree you choose to look at it. This tape here is designed for several reasons. We're doing a filming here on Mount Shasta, which is one tape. I'm doing an audible tape right here, right now, for the support group Consciousness. This is the June tape. And this is probably the highest audible tape, as well as videotape, that I've done in a while. We're, above the 10,000 mark, going to the 11,000 foot mark. And the key here is designed to see what's up here on top of this mountain, to see what it's like to stay in present time and be in a place where thought forms don't hang out, and energies move, and electrical storms come up, and the thrill of looking out off of a 14,000 foot structure of divinity, so to speak, and to look at all of the earth. So both of these tapes were designed for this. And as we took off yesterday, we did some filming, and we laughed, and we had a good time, and then we laughed, and we had a good time, and we laughed some more. So, all in all, it's pretty exciting. And so, last night we had our first meal of mushrooms and potatoes, figuring today we would be starting out at 3:30 in the morning, trying to get up to certain positions so that the land was still frozen so we could get across without too much trouble, and bring you a show from high atop Mount Shasta. Subject material was unknown at the time, because to think about subject material when you're down on the ground is worthless. When you're up here at 14,000 feet, there's a lot of different things to think about. And I wanted to be fresh on whatever subject it was. And so here's the subject: staying in the present moment. And also, not taking it personally, because there's a thing called timing. And all three of these things relate together: the present moment, timing, and not taking it personally. When we got up this morning at 3:30, ready to go, we found that we were totally socked in. And that trying to make any more of an ascent would be, quite difficult. So we decided we could just wait it out and see how things went. I noticed that when you're in the moment, you are here, you are present, you are having an experience, you are having a feeling, you are perceiving from a way that you don't normally perceive when you're not in the present moment. When we're hanging out as people and we're like daydreaming and we're working through different things, you'll notice that we're a couple seconds behind everything. Somebody will say something and you'll say, "Oh, what was that?" Or something will go by and they'll say, "Wow, did you see that?" And you'll go, "Huh, what?" And it's like, as we daydream and think about different things, we slip present time. Sometimes we go into present time even stronger when we're daydreaming, because you go into the space between the cells. The drawback is you can't bring the material back. So the key is to maintain a consciousness when you go into a daydreaming state, because that's more of a present time attitude. And I want to talk about the different attitudes that there are in present time. Present time sometimes is explained by myself, kind of can get confusing, because I'm dealing within milliseconds. We, as we work to understand things, deal in seconds. Our response to something falling, or our response to something dropping, we react to that. It's a physical movement. It takes X amount of time. When you're in the present moment, there isn't this seconds of time. You're in milliseconds. It's happening before your essence can even begin to think or to perceive an action. Present time is before the mind perceives a concept. Present time is before a thought even enters the mind to analyze. Present time is in a flow. There is a flow with present time. There is a feeling with present time. When you are forced to be into present time, you notice that you bring more of yourself, your personal self, into interaction with whatever the situation is. You notice that if you're not in present time, you're interacting, but not to the degree that you are in a present moment. Present moment causes you to bring all of your bodily functions into the actual conversation of the many multi-dimensions that you are, and you can feel different things. Like now, using the perfect example. We can't make the ascent. So in the present moment, we're just shooting the film, and we're using the present moment experience as a feeling to convey through the film. We've drug heavy loads, busted our backs to a degree. Haven't really busted them, it's just an expression, I shouldn't even use that. We've enjoyed ourselves coming up this mountain carrying exorbitant amounts of weight just so we could go up and film. And now here we sit after all the hard work is done, and we can't get any farther because we're snowed in, or rained in, or it's freezing, and whatever you want to call it, but we're in a mess right here. So now we have to come into present time. How can we make this work? Can we get the film to work at all? It's cold. It's all of a sudden present moment. You notice your body is experiencing more cold than normal, even though you're like layered to the maximum and you're laying on down bags. And yet you notice that you're cold. That's part of the perception of bringing you into present time. So you have to bring all the bodies, you have to bring the multi-dimensional self into present time. You have to be able to perceive. Then we decided that, hey, we could fast an extra day because you don't have food for all these extra days. We could fast and we could make the ascent tomorrow and still get good filming in if the storm, blew over. Then we came into present moment with, but the bags have to be back tomorrow because they need to be loaned out again to whoever else rents bags. And as you stay in present moment, you begin to notice that you have experiences and feeling. Your consciousness expands farther out than you normally have it going out. You notice that you have the ability to step into that subconscious area, which is a daydream state. And yet, even though you're conscious, you can feel that subconscious thought. You can perceive from more of a space than just conscious. Like you get more ideas quicker, faster, out of nowhere. Well, what can we really do? And then the next thing was, let's eat. So you got to go down to the basics. Now the body, if it's firing on more than one body, example, you got the subconscious mind's firing, you've got the conscious mind firing. You're also aware of the fact that the conscious mind is perceiving the subconscious mind giving it material, which means you're now starting to function on a multidimensional level. You're aware of the fact that it's colder than normal, and you're aware of the fact that you can perceive coldness at the same time you are conscious and subconscious. You're aware of the fact that you are thinking because you're bringing material from both conscious and subconscious realities into a framework that's audibilizing the mouth so that ideas can be expressed as to viewpoints and to, well, what do you think about these clouds? What do you think about this rain? What do you think about this sleet? What do you think about how crazy this is that there's three of us jammed in this tiny tent while the universe just pours out all kind of unique energy out there? While the mind is doing that, it runs through a whole lot of other things. This was a lot of effort. How come things aren't going right? How come it's raining and we can't get up? And all of a sudden, you bring yourself into present time and you go, well, because there's energy here and this is what you were supposed to be doing. As we started to climb, we all noticed that none of us chose to check the weather. And we all noticed that there was going to be a storm coming. And sometimes in the timing, there's like a certain set of timing that goes with this in-the-moment thing. An in-the-moment thing and timing. As we came up in a subconscious mind and yet in the conscious foreground, we could see that there was a storm. Basically, for myself only, I saw the storm before we even left. And as it started to clear and we said, wow, look at all the great angels, I knew that wasn't the actual storm, but it was like, well, let's walk it anyhow. And when you spend time later and you talk it over with the different people, you observe how you think as a group consciousness, which means when you're in the moment, you're capable of perceiving what your other brothers are doing. You're capable of exchanging thoughts that all of us had together within our own awareness space. We're all conscious of sharing thoughts and then observing that we all went against the odds and climbed it anyhow. I also observed that when I left, I was thinking in terms of filming, not so much in making the top. Then I noticed that the mind shifts into making the top. I noticed that by staying in the present moment, you have to get into a flow with not only the physical plane, but the emotional plane and the divine plane, and the mental planes, including conscious and subconscious. There's a flow when you're in the timing and in the moment that requires all of these aspects and avenues to be partaken of. This kind of fell over. Okay, we've readjusted the tape recorder. To do that, I've sort of lost my train of thought as to what I was talking about, but I know it was in the flow and how group consciousness works. See, in the moment, we are all part of the whole. When you are part of the whole, we all perceive the same aspect of the divinity by saying, well, gee, it kind of looked tough, and yet we climbed it anyhow. We all had that aspect as part of the whole, and yet we all had the aspect of part of the whole to climb it anyhow. So we were basically tuned in to the present moment, knowing what was going on, and still proceeding. The other thought is that when you get ready to do something, you stay in the moment, unless it's, called by inclement weather that you can't really do anything. You have to at least know that God knew you were going to do this weeks in advance, just like your brain knew weeks in advance. You also have to know that whatever is coming up for you, even though you're making a climb up the mountain when you know the chances of making it aren't as good as they could be, and yet you're going against odds because you know something's going on. Sometimes the goal, which would be climbing the mountain or making the film, you have to look past that in the moment and realize that there are other things that are going on. The universe gets us in places and things which is part of its timing in retrospect to what we're doing in the moment. So maybe the mountain needed somebody to be up here at this moment with this kind of energy to fulfill who knows what the divine plan has in mind. So to have an attachment to anything such as getting to the top or even making the film work, you have to get past that and know that there is a divine flow, and that whatever your pictures are, you have to let them go, because pictures keep you limited to the physical plane. When you have more pictures, then you don't have the ability to stay in the present moment, because all of a sudden, if the picture doesn't turn out the way you wanted it, you become disappointed. As soon as you become disappointed, you're into conceptual material, and you're really out of the present time. As we think, we have to put pictures into our mind. That all takes time. It's just in seconds, but that all takes time. Within those matters of seconds, our body begins to understand what the judgments on those pictures are, why we have those judgments, and we come up with an attitude to protect all the energy that we have invested in this particular scenario. When you're in the present moment and scenarios like this come up, what you want to do is you want to let go of the concepts and the ideas. And you'll find that it's a little difficult to let go of the investment you have in a judgment. But if you can let go of the investment in the judgment, you will find that you will smooth yourself into the present time moment, and you will have more of a perception than a thinking. See, thinking requires pictures, and it requires us sometimes to make judgments and evaluations, which then pulls us out of that present moment. When you're in the present moment, you're working on perceptions. Now, perceptions, you're talking about God, or this essence, the space, being able to come through your mind and through your essence faster than the human body can perceive the material. However, because the body is now in present moment, it brings in all of the other bodies, which is the multidimensional self, which is the conscious, the subconscious, the physical, and the mental, all working together, the perception all coming together. And when you're in that divine moment, all of the bodies work together to not have to think, to not have to put material together, but by having all of the bodies loaded and fully aware. The perceptions that come in give us more of an expansion of what God is really, of what God really is. When the conscious and subconscious are actually functioning together and the brain is capable of perceiving the action, and the perception is able to watch that, and from the divine you know that this is all working together. When you achieve these states, you allow the intelligent being to interpret signals that it normally couldn't achieve while it was in a thinking mode. And you are capable of putting knowledge into the human essence as a total scenario so that it can perceive present moment closer from a multidimensional self. When the multidimensional self begins to see itself functioning on several levels at once, it begins to understand how to hold present moment and not to spend any time on any judgments, on any evaluations, or anything that the mind of its own comes up with. When the mind comes up on its own, what happens is it begins to go into a thought world and pulls you out of present time. Okay, now let me jump into another piece using this. In the timing, we're learning to stay in the moment. The universe, getting into a new position here, the universe, in its evaluating the situation, wants to put you in positions which will totally benefit the physical structure. In other words, here we are up on top of Mount Shasta. Okay, it is not the ideal or pictures that we had in mind. However, instead of hanging on to those pictures, I'm looking at the amount of energy that this storm is emanating through our bodies. As I speak to you on this film and on this tape and stay in the present moment, I can feel the energies as they go through my body, and I can feel the other aspects of myself becoming recharged. Whether the film turns out good or the clouds even clear, the universe, in its understanding and trying to give us what we want, in our understanding of how to stay in present time and still live and fulfill a complete physical life on the planet, we bring timing, being in the present moment, and not taking it personally in such a combination, because sometimes what we think is bad timing is the universe's best material. It has spent years in getting you to this position just so that when all of these essences come together, you fulfill that which you have been working on. When we get caught in pictures of, well, wow, this isn't what I thought it was supposed to be, this is when we start repeating karma that, like, we don't need. So you're supposed to be up here having a good time. Talking to you on this camera and talking to here, it's having a good time, and it's the best example that I can give you of what present moment is like and knowing how the timing all works. See, when you're in present moment, you're part of the whole, which means you've turned over all of your free will to the divine will. You have decided that within yourself that God, the creative force, is superior to anything that you can come up with, and you have decided rather than even participate in the world in terms of judging anything as even red, green, blue, you're just hanging out, having a good time. The more you hang out and enjoy the present moment, the stronger the communion is that you have with what this thing is called God. It's like everybody wants to talk with God, they want to be with God, they want to participate in God. Like, what is God? God is the present moment. And when you're in the present moment, your vistas of imagination increase because you're divine. Your ability to see amazing vistas because you've got a conscious, a subconscious, a divine, a physical, a mental, and they're all capable of working together, bringing you material, stuff that you would never normally have if you were sitting in your brain running through a concept, because you would be feeding material to one point in time. You wouldn't be in present time, so you'd be having all kind of emotional charges, which has nothing to do with helping you in perceiving the divine. You would basically be recreating another pile of crap for yourself in the future, because you would be buying into your old pictures and your old concepts. All these things are like ideas and insights and feelings and sensations and present moment things that try to give you the idea of what present moment really is. When you're really working on present moment, just to be within a couple seconds of your thought is really in the moment stuff. Because you really do have time to observe so many things around you and not judge anything harshly. And as you learn how to do things in your life that help you to stay in present time, like not taking it personally. See, when you take something personally, that means you had an idea or a concept, regardless how big or how small it is. As soon as you took something personally, then you had to have an emotional judgment on it, you know? And all of this comes from something that you learned when you were a kid, or something you picked up from your parents, or something you picked up from another life. Now, when you pick this stuff up in another life or another time or whatever, it's just things that, these concepts, these ideas, they may not have anything to do with this present moment in time. Also, I observe that anything that I've done in the past served me who I was back then. And me who I am right now is different. And so I don't want to use the same ideas and concepts or judgments that I used in the past, because I'm no longer the same person. Which means all of the things in the past are basically worthless, other than they were points of reference for who you were back then. Now, rather than take things personal or judge them, I find that if I stay in the moment and I start to feel like I want to judge something, I stay in the moment and I say to myself, I can buy into this picture, whether it's being created by myself or somebody else, or I can choose to stay in the moment, and by being in the moment I can just look at it and say, well, this is okay, but like I don't need this now. And by doing this, what happens is you're an eternal being, and your eternity is based on the present moment. So if you're in this present moment, and you don't take this action personally, even though in the past you could see why you would have taken it personally, because it represented this or that, or it was something you picked up when you were 12, or you may not even know why you're taking it personally. You may not even know why you put so much energy to defend this one particular thought, because you've never really even used that thought or had it. And so basically by staying in the moment, you see who you really are in that split second. And you go, well, I'm not buying into this. Even though it's painful and it's uncomfortable, I'm not buying into it. I'm not taking this personally. Now, by not taking it personally, it may play itself out. But your multidimensional self that is staying in the present moment does not buy into emotional kicks. It doesn't buy into emotional garbage. It doesn't take all these bodies that you have slowly refined into the present moment and scatter them into a thought that you're an asshole, or that this isn't working for you, or this, you should have done that. And you clear all of that stuff out in this very moment as you grow. You will begin to notice that in this growth, this is what you really want. Growth within yourself. Take a listen to this and a look-see. I hear a lot of people, and I was one of them, so I can say this clearly, who want to see the paranormal, who want to see the phenomena, who say to themselves, when I can see this, I can believe it. Let me say this to you. How many of you have noticed that by doing the material on the tapes, or doing any of my workshops, or just working on yourself, you have discovered that you are more insightful? You have discovered that by becoming more insightful, you've learned to take in more things. You've also discovered that within this insightfulness, you've gained a peacefulness. Within this peacefulness, even though we have this hectic stuff every day still going on, there's more peace and contentment when you begin to know your inner self. When you begin to know your inner self, you become more understanding and tolerant of the self. You begin to want to stay in present time more, because you begin to understand that there's more of you. You begin to notice that your meditations are better, and that your perceptions are really starting to become clearer. Now I ask you, isn't that the paranormal that is more important than seeing power, or sticking your hand through a wall, or wanting to see all this stuff happen? The powerfulness of God is inside of you, and it's 1,000,000 times more powerful than the paranormal. The paranormal, hey, that's just what paranormal is. But look at that love that you're feeling inside. Look how your world is changing and growing based on your response to yourself, based on the work you've done on who you are. This is stuff that shows you how to not take it personally. It's stuff that keeps you in the moment. And it's stuff that will work for you. This is the God essence that you're looking for. This is so much more important than the other stuff. This is sort of an overall talk on bringing everything into the present moment and how important things are. The things that you do really bring you into the present moment. The clarity that you respond with. The more understandings that you're more than just the conscious mind. And sometimes you think, well, I'm conscious. Well, what about the subconscious? And what about thinking? And what about the physical? And what about the mental? People go, well, yeah, well, I'm conscious. And they mean just like one aspect. They don't mean all this whole thing. So I noticed that the lights are blinking on the camera, so the batteries must be getting low. And I'm coming to the end on this side of the tape. So what we're going to do is we're going to shut this equipment down. I'm going to turn this tape over. This is me, Dennis, being brought to you at the highest point on top of Mount Shasta in a little blizzard and loving you. See you on the other side.